Okay, great. Thank you and good morning, everyone. Let me first apologize for the delay. We were having some technical difficulties this morning, but thank you all for joining us. My name is Clarence Campbell, and I am the Executive Vice President for Lendistry. But I'm also here in a dual capacity because I'm also the Chairman of the Board for the Greater Baltimore Urban League. And we are excited to have you join us this morning as we talk about the SBA Paycheck Protection Program. Let me just share a little bit about what we'll do this morning and what we plan to cover. As you all know, the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program was initially launched in April of for the first round, and we are now in the midst of the second round of funding through SBA, and that round is due to end at the end of June, on June 30th. So really wanted to take an opportunity through the Greater Baltimore Urban League Raysburg Entrepreneurial Center, Raymond V. Haysbert Entrepreneurship Center, to really provide you, our small business constituents, the opportunity to understand how you can benefit from the Paycheck Protection Program. So one of the things we'll do today, this morning, is we will go through a high level information around the Paycheck Protection Program and how we here at Lendistry in the Greater Baltimore Urban League can support you. What's driving this is that Lendistry is in partnership with with Goldman Sachs and the National Urban League. And what we're doing is really working with small business owners in the state of Maryland to provide that support through the Paycheck Protection Program. Just a little bit about Lendistry. We are a community development financial institution as a mission-based small business lender. So our primary goal is to provide education to small business owners as well as helping business owners gain access to capital. So what we'll talk about today really is that process with the Paycheck Protection Program. There have been a number of changes, so why don't we just jump right into the Paycheck Protection Program. So bear with me one moment. Okay. So just as a reminder, SBA created the Paycheck Protection Program as part of the CARES Act in response to supporting business owners due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan that was designed to be a forgivable loan from the SBA, primarily to provide support through payroll to keep employees on payroll and to supplement. One of the things that we'll talk about today are the different types of business entities and also how the Paycheck Protection Program supports those organizations that may not have employees as well. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So what we'll do is we'll start with just as we talked a little bit about the Paycheck Protection Program, let me just point out before we go into that, how the process works. So the Paycheck Protection Program, again, is a loan that's offered through the SBA. And if you meet the qualifications of SBA for forgiveness, the loan could be fully or partially forgiven. And the way that works is initially SBA designed this for the loan proceeds to be used for at least 75% to go towards payroll. That has since been amended, and it is now 60%. So the SBA amended that target of 75%, and now states that at least 60% of the proceeds must be used for payroll, to keep employees on payroll, to rehire employees as well. Another change that the SBA offered is that the program was initially to be used over a period of 8 weeks. That has been extended to 24 weeks. So those are two recent changes that you won't see in this presentation, but those are changes that the SBA has made over the last couple of weeks as well. So let's start with just talking about what's required to apply. And there are really three basic types of organizations. We have corporations, partnerships, as well as sole proprietors. So the information here that we'll first talk about is just reviewing what's required as a corporation. And this is really designed to be a scaled down version. Let me explain that as we're taking the documentation, we're really looking to verify a couple of things. One, that the business is fully operational and that it was operational in 2019 and prior to the cutoff period for SBA, which was February 15th, 2020. We ask for corporations, we gather a payroll summary, and this is to verify the payroll that you've paid out. We also utilize the 941s and 940s. So the 941 and 940s are 941s are your quarterly payroll statements. 940 is an annual. So that's what we use to verify the income, and that's what we're basing the loan on. We also, you're able to, and as you're looking at payroll costs, one of the things that is included in payroll costs is anything that you pay towards health and retirement, health insurance and retirement benefits. So we also look at documentation to verify that information. We verify entity documents. For example, for a corporation, it would be your articles of incorporation. And the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, we actually have to verify whether any organization has gained funding from the EIDL and if it was used for payroll. So we would gather that documentation if it was applicable. There is a 4-page application that the SBA requires. It's the Paycheck Protection Program application, and we take a photo ID. And I should have said in the beginning, there will be time for us to answer any questions at the end. So please feel free to leverage the chat feature where we will come back and answer questions at the end. I'll go through as a very high level presentation and then save time for answering questions at the end. For partnerships, some of the information that we will require here would be the 2019 IRS 1065, which is your K-1 that would be filed. We also look at the payroll summary as we are verifying the information there, just as we did with the corporations. Same documentation for the health insurance and retirement, as well as entity documents. Entity documents for the partnerships would be the articles of organization that we would take, as well as any fictitious business documentation that you have. We still have the EIDL requirement for all of the loans, as well as the Paycheck Protection application and the photo ID. For sole proprietors, and let me pause for a moment because this is where we've seen a lot of confusion in terms of sole proprietors not being aware that they are eligible. Sole proprietors are eligible to apply. So although we've talked a lot about employees and wages and payroll, as a sole proprietor, you cannot include 1099 employees for the Paycheck Protection Program because 1099 workers are actually eligible to apply on their own as independent contractors. However, as a sole proprietor, the owner is eligible to apply for the income that they would derive from the organization. And so the documentation that we would take from a sole proprietor would be the Schedule C from your Form 1040 for 2019. And while we recognize that the filing date has been extended this year and everyone may not have filed, it doesn't have to actually be a filed copy, but we would require a draft in place of the filed copy for the 2019 Schedule C. We do not take 2018 documentation for either entity type. So it would be your 2019 Schedule C either filed or a draft copy. And the way that we utilize that 2019 Schedule C to come up with your average monthly income. And we'll talk about that in a moment, how that's derived. But we look at your net income for the year. So more information we'll talk about there. We also, for a sole proprietor, have to verify that you have been active in business. So we would actually, if there's a Form 1099, we would gather that for the year for 2019. And if there's no Form 1099, you're also able to submit bank statements. And we would take 3 bank statements. The January 2019 bank statement to show your business active at the beginning of the year, and then 2019 December bank statement to verify that your business was active at the end of the year. We also gather a February 2020 bank statement to ensure and verify that the business was active at the time of the cutoff period for SBA, which again is February 15th, 2020. While we recognize there's no business documentation for a sole proprietor, we would gather a fictitious business name if applicable, and then the others that we've discussed as well. Any EIDL funding that you've gathered, we would need to verify, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program application and your photo ID. So let me talk a little bit about who's eligible to apply. Small businesses with less than 500 employees, which is inclusive of nonprofits, veteran organizations, as well as self-employed individuals that we've just talked about, are eligible to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. There are also some situations where companies, organizations may have an exception. So for example, 500 employee threshold includes a couple things. The 500 employee threshold includes all workers, and organizations in the food services, the rule may be adjusted. So just to make sure, just to give that information there. Loans, again, are designed to be forgiven. So the loans that are offered for the Paycheck Protection Program are designed to be forgiven if they're used for the stipulations of SBA. So one is payroll, using for payroll, at least 60%, not 75%, being used for payroll. And then you're also allowed to leverage 40% towards rent or lease, interest paid on mortgages, and utilities. One thing that's really important is that there is a certification process that's leveraged at the end of the designated period, which would be 24 weeks, and it's critical to maintain documentation as it relates to payroll, either those that have remained on payroll or those that you have rehired. So as you may be wondering, well, how much can you apply? So the loan process and the amount that you can borrow is very simple. You're able to borrow up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So what we do as we're looking at the documentation gathered, we look at the sum of all of your included payroll costs, and we back out any excluded payroll costs to come up with your total payroll costs. And then at that rate, you're able to apply for up to 2.5 times that payroll cost. So as you're looking at what's included in the payroll costs, it would be salary, wage, and commission or similar compensation, payment for cash tips or equivalent, vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave as well as provisions of group health insurance, premiums paid on behalf of employees, as well as any benefit paid towards retirement. And then also payment of state and local taxes based on the payroll that's been calculated. One of the things I think it's really important to explain here is how we would determine the average monthly payroll for sole proprietors, because most sole proprietors don't take a standard monthly allocation from for income. So for sole proprietors, as I said earlier, we use the Schedule C on your 1040 for 2019. On line 31 of your Schedule C, it indicates your net income. We then take your net income from that amount and we average it out over a 12-month period to get your monthly average income. Then we multiply that by 2.5 to determine the maximum amount that you could borrow for the Paycheck Protection Program loan. There are also excluded payroll costs, such as compensation for individuals in excess of $100,000 as prorated through February 15th, 2020. Payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, as well as income taxes, and any compensation of an employee whose principal place is outside of the United States, as well as some situations for qualified sick leave would be excluded. As we talked about the forgiveness of the loan, it's about meeting the stipulations of the SBA, as we discussed those 3 areas, or those 4 areas rather, that you can use for payroll, as well as mortgage interest, rent or lease, and utilities. One thing to highlight here is that the period has been extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks in terms of utilizing the funds. And we won't talk much about forgiveness. What I will share is that the forgiveness process is continuously being reviewed. The program is designed to end at the end of this month. So we do expect that there'll be more updates forthcoming from the SBA within the week. But some of the changes that have come out in recent weeks have been the extension from 75% to 60%, or the change from 75% to 60%, as well as the extension from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. It's important to know that as it stands, there is a calculation and an application process that you would use to go through the forgiveness process. We won't spend a lot of time on this because, again, it's being reviewed. But as that information is updated, it will be provided through the Greater Baltimore Urban League. And also, we share directly with all of our customers that have applied for and been funded for the Paycheck Protection Program. But it is important to understand that forgiveness could be a portion of the loan or all of the loan based on how you utilize the funds. So let's talk a few moments about how to submit your application with Lendistry. As I've shared, Lendistry is working in partnership with Goldman Sachs as well as the National Urban League to provide support. So what you're seeing here is our normal web page for Lendistry. One of the things that we have provided is there will be a separate page specifically related for the National Urban League. So you, as the customers of the Greater Baltimore Urban League, will have a designated page that you will use. This is our main page that walks you through our portal. And the concept is still the same. As you go into the page for the National Urban League, you would actually sign on and then click on the apply link. Once you have clicked on and applied and gone through the application, and we'll go through what that will look like in a moment, there is a download that's there to complete the Sba Application Form. So our application process is very simple, going through a 2-page document online, and then there's an application that you complete for the SBA. So we will review both of those so that you can be aware of what that looks like. So let's start with the SBA application that you would download and complete. There's basic information that the SBA requires. And actually, when you go through and download that application, we actually will provide some information there to help you complete it. So again, basic information around your entity type, business legal name, tax ID number, and business contact information, primary contact number, contact person, and email. And then also here is where you will calculate what has been your average monthly income that you will provide, your average monthly payroll, excuse me, that you will provide, and the maximum amount that you can borrow. We also ask you to indicate the number of employees you have. And remember, these are wage earning employees. So you would not include any contractor, any 1099 workers in that field. These are only wage earning employees and with which you withhold taxes and pay taxes. We also would ask you to check the purpose of the loan, indicate that, and then we ask for the name of any owner that's above 20% ownership of your business. So this may require you, if you have owners that own more than a 20% stake in your business, to add a separate page there. And then obviously the TIN number and the address here. There are a few questions here that we would go through, and there are some questions that I'll highlight where they could be questions that would automatically be a decline for the application. So for example, questions 1 and 2 must be answered yes, or else the loan will not be approved. So the question 1 is the applicant or owner of the applicant presently suspended, disbarred, proposed for disbarment, declared ineligible, voluntarily excluded from participation in this transaction by federal department or agency. And then, so as you look at those questions, and it'll indicate there, those 2 questions that would be an automatic would not be approved. The other 2 questions would be questions 5 and 6. And here, what's really important that is not only are you answering the questions, but you also have to initial. So once you've gone through and completed the questions here, there is another page, certification here, that you're going to initial each question. One of the things I will point out, and there will be an updated version of the form, but one of the things I'll point out are the changes that have been made. So we talked about the forgiveness piece portion that will reflect 40%, not 25% on the new application. And you'll also notice that the period has been extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. And it also points out the ending period, which is February 15th. One of the things that's really important is that on this page, each of those questions are certified with your initials. And then you are signing the application with the date, then printing your name, and then the title of your title. So owner, CEO, president. So as you go through completing the application within our system and our portal, once you click on apply, you would be taken into our portal to complete the information, to complete the application, and then to upload all required documents. So some of the information that would be needed obviously would be just your personal information here on the first page that it's going to ask you to fill that information in. And then on the second page, it's going to ask you information about the business. So it'll help you to see the business information. Then you would go through and complete your business information. This is all done in our portal to make it very simple and easy. And then there's information around the actual loan. So it would ask you some general questions to complete here as you're continuing to apply for the SBA loan. And this is what the application would look like there as well. And then the fourth step would be some background information. So it's going to ask you some general questions about you as the owner for the application. And this gives you a visual of how that would look. And one of the things I should have shared is that this is a resource that you'd be able to use as you're continuing to go through to complete the application as well. So once you have submitted, once you've completed the application and submitted, you will get a notification that will say thank you we have received your application, and then you will actually receive a sign-on to the portal. The purpose of getting the sign-on to the portal is that all of the documentation that is required, you can upload. You'll go in and upload it into our portal. And then that will allow us to begin to work through the process of completing the loan application for you. So you would get the this email that's sent to you and asking you to go in and log into our portal. This gives you a visual of how you would log in to the portal. And that information is sent via secured email to you based on the information that you provide. Once you've completed the application and you go into the portal, it's going to walk you through some information there. So it's going to give you a summary of the loan application that you've just submitted, the information that you've put in, and then it's going to ask you to begin to upload documents into the system based on what's required for the application. And what's really helpful here is that it will list all of the documentation that you need to submit. And as you submit that information into the portal, it will then move from pending to completed. So you can have a thorough understanding of whether or not you've uploaded all of the documentation needed. And again, that documentation will be based on your entity type. Just walks through uploading. And this is what it will shift from the pending to completed so that you can see what information is still being required. We'll also give you another resource here, just showing you what documentation will be required based on your entity type. And then it's going to walk you through asking you to confirm your bank information. So one of the things that's really important is that when you are approved for the Paycheck Protection Program, Lendistry is a direct lender for the SBA. So we actually gather your documentation, we underwrite, meaning we review all the documentation that's required to approve the loan. And I think it's really important to share as well is that the documentation that we're reviewing, meaning we take a soft pull of your credit report, but we're not reviewing you from a credit perspective for approving the loan. We're basically verifying that there is no OFAC reporting, and that in essence, that's just a terrorist reporting that is required by the SBA. So that's the only thing that we use the credit report for. It's a soft hit on your credit bureau, and we are not looking at any other items there. So we're not looking at your credit score. We're not looking at your debt service coverage for the business. That's not required for this loan. For your documentation that you're sending from for your business, we're verifying that your business is active. So it must be active with the Secretary of State. And we're also verifying, reinforcing the payroll information or income information if you're a sole proprietor that you stated in the application. That's the purpose of gathering that information. But when you're approved, we actually fund you directly. So we have to verify your bank information. So you would actually go through and do a verification of your bank accounts in the system here as well. Once you've gone through that, it will ask you to also complete a payroll calculator. The payroll calculator is you use all the information that you shared around your income and the payroll to complete the calculator. And there is a calculator for corporations as well as partnerships and sole proprietors with employees, sole proprietors without employees, recognizing that sole proprietors could have employees or not have employees as well. But it will walk you through completing that. And this is a visual of what that application looks like. So you would complete that application, that calculator, I'm sorry, and upload that into the system. So this is, again, just giving you a visual of what it would look like if you're a corporation or partnership with employees. we're going to be utilizing the 941s, quarterly funds, as well as the 940 to verify the payroll. If you are a sole proprietor, however, or even an LLC, even a single member LLC, single member partnership, filing as a sole proprietor, we then use your Schedule C. So as you can see, as a sole proprietor without employees, we would be using your line 31 income from your Schedule C to calculate your what you would be could be approved for, or your maximum eligibility for loan amount for the Paycheck Protection Program. And then once that information has been completed, you would then get a summary showing everything has been complete and that your bank statements your bank verification has been completed as well. And then it will talk a little bit about the process from there. So once we've gathered all of that information, there is a team dedicated to supporting the greater Baltimore Urban League. So our team here would then go in and review your documentation. And then that individual, those team members would reach out to you either via email or by phone to review the documentation that you've provided. Once we've gathered all of the required documentation, our underwriters then review to verify the information that's there. And once it's approved, we fund you directly. So you would have several touch points here. One of the things that's really important to know is through this process, Lendistry provides a dedicated team member to support you through this process. So you would have a representative that would see you through, regardless of the stage of the application. And then you're also supported through the Greater Baltimore Urban League to provide any situation or any information that you may have in reference to technical assistance. So this is the process for completing the Paycheck Protection Program application. I'm going to pause now to see if there are any questions that you may have. Let's see, let me go into our chat feature and see here. So it does look like there are a few questions in the chat. So let me take them, and then Tiffany, we could let me know whether or not we can open up for questions. We do still have some time. But the first question is, do you need to make over $36,000 if you are a sole proprietor? So let me answer that question, and it's a very good question that's being asked there. So for the Paycheck Protection Program, we look at your net income. And we do look at a loan amount of at least $7,500. So if you were a sole proprietor making $36,000 a year, then yes, that would qualify you for $7,500 in terms of the amount that you could borrow to be able to apply for this loan. So you don't have to make over 36,000, but 36,000 would be at the minimum loan amount that we're looking at. And one of the things to look at in some cases, and this is where I'd be happy to speak directly with anyone if you have a specific question about this in terms of whether or not this loan is most appropriate. It also says my monthly rent, there's a question here that says my monthly rent is $1,200. Utilities are another $200 per month. I was told I didn't qualify. Well, let me, and that's a very good question. The monthly rent and utilities, the way that's utilized or looked at with the Paycheck Protection Program is not so much around the amount that you pay, it's around the percentage of the loan that you use for Paycheck protection. So for the loan to be fully forgiven, or for the loan to be forgiven, SBA states that you have to use at least 60% of the loan towards payroll. So if you spent $1,400, $1,200 for rent and $200 for utilities, and that exceeded the 40% that's allowed for the loan, then the loan that portion of the loan would not be forgiven. But it doesn't, though the amount of your rent and utilities does not drive your approval rating for the SBA loan. That is specifically, the qualification is specifically based on the amount of income payroll. So I hope that answers the question. There's another question that says, what is the maximum loan amount here? And again, your loan amount is based on 2.5 times your 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. However, this loan could go up to over $1 million. So it really is based on your average monthly payroll that we would use to calculate your maximum loan amount. And again, that's based on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. There's a question that says, my grants are mostly restricted. If I get a loan, how will that impact the use of my current funds? So one of the things I think it's really important to understand here is that this loan is based on payroll. So as you're looking at the funding that you're getting from restricted grants, this is based on payroll and how you're using it for your payroll. So you may want to talk more with your accountant about how that is impacting based on restricted funds. But these funds are designed to be used for payroll, and as a nonprofit, you are eligible to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. So it looks like we've answered all the questions that are in the chat. But let me pause for a moment because I think I saw someone raising their hand. So Tiffany, are we able to take any other questions? I believe I saw Sylvia trying to raise her hand. So Sylvia, I don't know if it looks like you're on mute right now. Don't know if you're able to unmute you there. Tiffany, can you hear me? There does look like one other question has just come in. So let me see here. This question is, I just started my business in July 2019. Am I eligible since I do not meet the $36,000? So starting your business in July, as long as you started prior to December 2019, you would be eligible. Depending on what you've reported for your income could drive the eligibility based on the loan amount. But I would encourage anyone that has a question specifically that we speak directly. And I'm going to provide my information at the end of this call. So the end of this webinar. So I'd be happy to speak directly to anyone to talk about what that looks like. And then there's one is So there's a question here that said I went mute. Can everyone hear me okay? Tiffany, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're clear.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You have
a
lot of questions. You have some questions in the question and answer as well. Somehow my video is not working for some reason, but we have all of the time needed to answer questions because we have quite a few people on here. that have questions, and we need to remind them that hopefully it's not going to end June 30th, but we would like people to get the information that they need so that they can hurry and apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tiffany. And that is a really good point. I think the purpose of this webinar today was really to provide information. It really was to provide the information around the Paycheck Protection Program. We recognize that in the initial funding phase, the funds were not distributed proportionately, and that there are still funds available for the Paycheck Protection Program to the tune of about $100 billion still available. It is possible that the program could be extended. That is currently under review, but we are operating from the assumption that it won't be, and really urging everyone that would like to move forward or have questions to really look to do so immediately. It really is, as you look here for this week, really focused on trying to help help as many as we can to gain access to capital. So again, great opportunity, great reinforcement from Tiffany. Yes, it is due to end on June the end of this month, June 30th. So it really is imperative to act immediately. There is another question that's come in that said, is it possible to get more than one PPP loan? And this is a really good question. And the answer is no. You can only be funded once. But I think there's a really important distinction to make here. A couple things. One is you would only be able to be funded once for the Paycheck Protection Program. So you may have applied in a number of different places. Each lender can see whether or not there's been an application that's been taken, and we ask you to certify that you've only received funding from the current lender that you're taking funds. I think one of the distinctions to make, though, is that you are not restricted from applying to only one lender. So, for example, we've had a number of business owners who applied in the first round back in April, but never received any notification, never received any communication, and did not receive funding. We have individuals who have come through and applied in the second round of funding and received funding. So what I'd say is if you've applied before, but you have not received any communication on your application, or you have not been funded, that does not preclude you from applying again. You are able to apply again. So you can't be funded twice, but you can apply a second time. So very good question there. Are there any other questions?
Clarence, you have a question from Ms. Lachelle Stewart in regards to restricted funds from grants.
Mm-hmm.
I think her question is if she currently receives grants that covers her staff salary and she gets the PPP loan, how is she able to use the PPP loan funding for those salaries?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things about the Paycheck Protection Program that you actually have to certify is that the that your business has been impacted by COVID. So you have to certify that. That's one of the certification processes for the Paycheck Protection Program, is that you're applying because you've been impacted. If your business has not been impacted and your payroll has not been impacted, then I think what you would find is that what you're leveraging for payroll, or the percentage that you're able to leverage for payroll, may not be forgiven. And one of the things that's important to understand, and I apologize because I don't think we talked about this earlier, is that if your loan is not forgiven, then the loan is then amortized out over a 24-month period at a rate of 1%. So anything that's not used for, doesn't meet the 60% funding for payroll, which in this case, it sounds like it probably would not, if you already have funds that are allocated towards your payroll. If it doesn't meet the 60% funding, then it could be deemed as non-forgivable, and either the whole loan or a portion of the loan could be amortized out over a 24-month period, and you'd have to repay the loan at a rate of 1%. There is a deferment of 6 months of payment for those payments that have to be for making payments. But it's important to understand that funds that do not meet the forgivable feature or the forgivable clause would be repaid at a rate of 1% over 24 months. So it would be important to look at your restricted funds and look at how you would be impacting the 60% rule there. Very good question. And thank you, Tiffany, for expanding that, because I don't know if I fully answered that the first time. So I think we've answered all of the questions in the chat. Let me again say thank you for your time and joining us here today to learn about the Paycheck Protection Program. I and my team are available and here to assist here at Lendistry, as well as the team at the Greater Baltimore Urban League. One of our key priorities in both organizations is ensuring that you as business owners have the information that's critical to be successful and have access to capital. So I'm going to provide my information. You can feel free to contact me directly, or you can contact us at the Urban League, and we will be happy to reach out to you directly. Again, my name is Clarence Campbell, and my direct number is 443-737-4173. Again, that's 443-737-4173. My email address is Clarence, CLARENCE .Campbell, CAMPBELL at Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com. And all of this information will also be provided to you, sent out from the Greater Baltimore Urban League, so that you have my direct information as well as my team to reach my team. I do want to share, as I shared earlier, and I know this information was sent out from the Greater Baltimore Urban League, but I will also share that there is a special link that has been sent, or special link that has been set up for Greater Baltimore National Urban League Entrepreneurship Center customers. So Tiffany, I'll ask if we can just make sure we send that out once again to the participants that we've had here today, so that you can understand that information. But feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Tiffany, any closing remarks?
Yes, I want to make sure that you answered this one question. I'm not positive if you did. I was getting some questions personally, but there's one person, Amanda P., that says, if you have multiple businesses, would you take out a separate loan for each business?
Very good question. So yes, you are eligible to apply for individual paycheck protection loan by business. So if you're the owner of multiple businesses, separate entities, yes, you can take out a separate paycheck protection loan for each business. And we have a number of clients that have been successful at doing that. Okay. Well, once again, I just urge you, reach out to us at the Greater Baltimore Urban League, reach out to us here at Lendistry. We are here to support, and I look forward to working with each of you and providing assistance for anything that we can do here. So Tiff, that concludes the presentation today. Thank you, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much. I ask that everyone who has logged on now be sure that we have your email address so we can continue to forward you more information for our upcoming webinars. We will have additional webinars on the PPP loan, as well as other information for small businesses, youth, and participants that are interested in our upcoming workforce development program. Again, thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I've listed my email address. You can reach us at gbul.org at any time. Follow us on Facebook again, or on our Instagram social media, gbul.org. It was a pleasure having you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you very much. You were able to answer some really imperative questions for some of our clients and some of hopefully our new clients that will join the Haysbert Center. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Have a good one.